Hi, welcome to the Kiwi Rocket. Tonight we have Dr. Emanuel Garcia and Sue Gray, lawyer, and they're going to be discussing New Zealand Medical Council. Who is being brought before the council? Is their process fair? What's it going to do with COVID-19? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to the Kiwi Rocket. Today we have Sue Gray, who's a lawyer who's represented many people who have fought against the New Zealand Medical Council for unfair dismissal of their licences. And we also have Dr. Emanuel Garcia, MD, who's a psychotherapist and psychiatrist, and he has also had trouble with medical boards. And today they're here to talk to us about so many different things that are to do with New Zealand Medical Board, corruption, and why we should be concerned about New Zealand Medical Board. Is it kosher? Do they know what they're doing? Do they know the difference between misinformation, disinformation, and fact? Or are they making assumptions based on censored information? Let's dive into this. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, hi, Joe. Great to be on talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. By the way, I'm retired, just to be clear, and what I say is not, anything I say is not to be construed as recommendations for medical practice in any way. I'm just talking as a citizen of the realm.
And I can't be giving legal advice. I can only be sharing my honestly held opinions as a member of the public, but who has law qualifications and science qualifications and expertise in this area.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So I hear that there's a female doctor who's being persecuted by the New Zealand Medical Board, who's being brought before the disciplinary tribunal over her views of COVID-19 vaccines, and she is too unwell to attend, being mentally ill and physically ill, and she has documentation to support both of those things, and yet they're still expecting her to testify. Why do you think that she should not testify at this time?
Yeah, I mean, the disciplinary process is there to protect the public. It's not there to persecute doctors and to destroy people's lives. It's incredibly stressful. It's bad enough as a lawyer having to speak before the courts and disciplinary processes. But if you're a doctor, your whole career is helping people. It's not that kind of confrontational situation. So even at the best of times, it's hard. But when you've got medical issues as well, and I just find it extraordinary that she's got medical evidence to say that she's not well enough to testify, and yet she's still being told that she needs to. I've never seen that happen before.
Amazing.
So apparently she asked for an adjournment, and they have been harassing and persecuting this poor person to the point where it really is a matter of torture. And they're going after her for absolutely nothing, because when I look at the so-called allegations and charges, these are things that she did that were within her rights as a doctor to do, such as choosing to prescribe a certain medicine because she thought that was the best medicine for someone. Ivermectin's been a big target by the Medical Council for anybody, and they've been adding riders to licenses they've approved under duress, and they've been accusing people of prescribing ivermectin as if it's a great danger to the public. This is actually one of the safest medicines in the history of the world. It's been taken by, I think, billions of people, over 2 billion people. It won its founder, its creator, a Nobel Prize, and yet it's been maligned and slandered from the start. It was called a horse medicine. It was used in Uttar Pradesh, a big state in India, that actually saved a lot of people's lives and treated them and provided excellent treatment for people who were in danger of whatever this COVID thing was. And yet this medical council has an agenda, Joe. They've had an agenda from the start. And it began way back in 2021 when I went to renew my license after I had resigned from the DHB. And all of a sudden I found that my license was suspended, and that because I had spoken out with concerns about the jab, concerns about the lockdowns, concerns about masks, concerns about the lack of early treatment. And I was open about my views. And so they they made me and two other docs, at that time was Peter Canaday and Matt Shelton, an example by suspending our licenses. Now, at that time, I initially was going to appeal, and then I decided I was so sick of the system that I pursued a deregistration path, which I did via equity law. And I was able to get completely deregistered, which to me was a good thing, although I lost all of my ability to earn any income as a doctor as a result of that. So I have no license to practice. But what that achieved for the medical council is that it sent a big cannonball message to any other doctor who thought that they were going to put their hand up and say anything about informed consent, first do no harm, or we should treat people when they're sick. We're not so convinced about this jab that has not been tested by time. And the other 18,000 doctors, with some exceptions, went mum completely. So they accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. And that's a typical kind of mafioso tactic, all right? Or actually, it's a tactic the Nazis used in World War II. You get somebody from the village, you kill them, and everybody else stops the resistance.
Yeah, it was
But they didn't
incredibly
kill us. They
cruel.
didn't kill us because we're still talking. And I'm gonna tell you too, at that time, you know, if you fought this stuff, the lawyers that we had were trying to get us to sign what were called voluntary undertakings, meaning kind of gag orders, okay, while the things went through the court. I knew that the courts were fixed and were rigged, and I don't want anything of that. So by saying I don't want part of this, I at least preserve my right to say whatever I wanted to say. And I said it.
Free speech must be very important to you because, as a mental health professional, surely telling the truth or not telling the truth would have an effect on one's mental health.
Well, being able to express oneself in however one believes is a fundamental part of who we are. And to find that that freedom of speech, which is something we're born with and not conferred by a government, is not allowed. I mean, this has to tell you there's something rotten in the state of Denmark when that kind of thing happens.
The law's supposed to protect freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. And they're all protected in the Bill of Rights. They're supposed to be like the top hierarchy of our law. But during COVID, it was like all of those things just got forgotten, didn't matter anymore. Let's just follow the agenda, follow the narrative, don't ask questions. So we had all of that, and then we had the whole health and disabilities code of patient rights, the whole thing about informed consent that became a really big issue way back when Dame Sylvia Cartwright did the cervical cancer inquiry, and they brought out this code of patients' rights to make clear that it's for the patients to decide what treatment that they want, obviously in consultation with the doctor, but the health practitioner is required, legally required, to discuss options, alternatives, risks. And yet the Medical Council came out with this ad hoc guidance note that said, no, you can only talk about the benefits of vaccines. And any doctor that questioned the vaccine, talked about any of the risks, any of the uncertainties, or any of the alternatives, seems to have been sanctioned, harassed, persecuted, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Well, I will add to that it's particularly hypocritical because in 2019, as I've written about in my Substack, I've covered the Medical Council a lot in my Substack, informed consent, but they sent out an informed consent guidance statement that was so strongly worded that they said if we didn't provide informed consent to patients, we were criminally liable. So that's how dearly they regarded informed consent. And then when it comes to the COVID jab, informed consent disappears altogether. And you can't say anything negative about this thing. You can't provide informed consent, which is absolutely contrary to any fundamental medical way of practicing, and contrary to freedom of speech, even more fundamental rights.
And
So,
contrary to criminal law. I mean, if any kind of injection or physical assault without informed consent is a criminal assault. So informed consent is absolutely fundamental to everything, or it's supposed to be.
What's worse is that people are coming forward with so many illnesses now, and it's not been acknowledged what might be causing those illnesses. I know lots of people who have had turbo cancer, for instance.
Mm.
And they might put out articles about what could be causing cancer. But, well, I should say I had two relatives. They both got diagnosed with cancer, and one died within 2 days of being diagnosed. It was instant stage 4 cancer, felt fine, and then suddenly turned yellow and died. And the other one, he died within weeks, and there was nothing wrong with him. He had lived an active lifestyle. He was a bit older, granted, he was in his 70s, but there was nothing wrong with him. And then he just went downhill rapidly and he died. And all I could think was that not only will he not get proper cancer treatment, because all these breakthroughs that are going on with ivermectin and other things saying, look, it can help cancer, are not being reported here. So he wouldn't get access to that through our health system. But also that he's been vaccinated for work and then he lost his life, but there's no official evidence to that. And I'm hoping that the COVID inquiry will at least bring some people to account a little bit, because there's been no accountability so far. And that really bothers me a lot, to see people suddenly getting cancer everywhere. That's just rapid. And a lot of people don't even know the term turbo cancer. They have no idea about the stuff in the vaccines and its manufacturing process and its relationships to how it can cause cancer and speed up the rate of cancer and stop the body's ability to even recognize the cancer cells and fight them.
And I
Yeah.
think it's important to understand that medical causality is very hard to determine. And that's why we have stringent epidemiologic standards to look at large numbers of people and to make observations about patterns. So not every cancer, you can't blame every cancer that's developed on any one particular etiologic agent. But I want to give you a little story.
Okay.
A neighbor of mine was last Easter, um, or the Easter before, developed a deep venous thrombosis, and then on Easter Sunday developed a pulmonary embolism, was rushed to hospital. They saved her life. And when I talked to her after she got back, I said, "My, I'm sorry to hear about this, but what are the doctors saying? What are they thinking about?" She said, "Oh, they don't know. It just kind of happened."
Mm.
And then, all right, she continued to have recurrent clots. And I kept asking, well, what are they saying now? She said, oh, well, now they have the answer. I'm getting this because I had COVID a year before. So there was no consideration of the possibility. I'm not saying this is a definite proof, but the possibility that there were other contributing factors like the jab, which we have lots of evidence to support is thrombogenic, okay, causes clots, has all kinds of stuff uh, that is contributing to the morbidity and mortality of people. You know, we hear a lot about the rate of excess deaths. Now, excess deaths, that's a very weak phrase. It doesn't really say much. It's like too much molasses or something. It's actually people dying in greater numbers than we think they should be. We have
Mm.
to investigate if that's the case, why are these things happening? If someone dies after getting the jab a month later, there should be an autopsy that looks into the causes. There are no autopsies looking into the causes of something that has not been tested by time. So, whatever's in the jab, whatever you believe is or is not in the jab, I'm going to say several things. One, I believe that a jab, a COVID jab, was never necessary in the first place. Okay. And secondly, whenever you introduce a new medical treatment, you sure as hell better follow up on what the consequences of that treatment may be, whatever it is. And that part was never done and is not being done. With
Well,
respect
they
to the
act.
turbo cancers, I'll just say about the turbo
Mm.
cancers. Now, we have a lot of evidence worldwide of this increased rate of these strangely aggressive cancers that are cropping up, particularly in young people. Again, there should be active investigations. And there are lots of ideas about why this is occurring. And I think there are very strong links to the jab, which is absolute ruination for the immune system. The other thing people should understand, people on what I call the other side who don't even know about this, which is that, okay, they've gotten two, three, four jabs, and they're still getting COVID. What the hell kind of vaccine is this that you're still getting the disease for which you're taking the vaccine so you can't get the disease. Everything's turned upside down, Joe. Everything.
Yeah, it's worse than that because the first thing is the vaccine only had provisional consent because MedSafe, the New Zealand regulator, wasn't satisfied that it was safe or effective. They weren't satisfied that it met all the criteria in the Medicines Act. So when the government was telling the people of New Zealand it's safe and effective, the regulator had said, we don't know if it's safe and effective, so we can't give it full approval. We can only give it conditional approval. 58 conditions with more information required for safety, efficacy, and the product integrity, the way that they manufactured it. And we went to court about that because at the time, provisional consent, you could only use it for a limited number of patients. And we said everyone over 16 is not a limited number of patients. Everyone in New Zealand over 16 is most of New Zealand. The court agreed, and the next day, the government changed the law. So this is not accidental. This is
Right.
intentional that they've changed it. The other law they changed is the Coroner's Act. So you used to every sudden death that was unexpected was investigated. But it must be about 2021, 2022, they made an amendment to the Coroner's Act that said, oh, any death from natural causes doesn't need to go to the coroner. So any heart attack, any stroke, anything like that doesn't need to go to the coroner anymore. Well, this is the problem. These COVID deaths, people get a heart attack or a stroke, but why are 16-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 32-year-olds, why are they suddenly getting heart attacks or their heart is suddenly stopping, they're getting a stroke? It's not that they died of a natural cause, it's what caused the problem in the first place. But none of that is being investigated because of the law change. We submitted on the law change, we pointed out how wrong it was, and they did it anyway. So again, that was deliberate. They knew the consequences and they did it anyway. So this is a whole lot worse than just reckless or accidental.
It's purposeful. It was purposeful from the beginning. Okay.
Mm.
And several things to follow up with that. When, if there's a true pandemic, all right, and people really are worried about something quite dangerous and lethal, you would think a tremendous amount of energy would be put into finding the key to treating people, to finding a cure. What they did was the absolute absurd opposite. They basically said there's no treatment. You can't breathe, then come to the emergency room. They were actively suppressing the ability of doctors to provide prevention and treatment. And this gets back to the ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D. My gosh, we had a lot of agents that are very helpful in combating respiratory viruses like COVID, for example. Okay, there was no mention of any kinds of treatment, no encouragement of any kinds of treatment, no encouragement of prevention. It was all stay home, put your head down, keep your fingers crossed. If you can't breathe, then we'll put you on a ventilator or whatever they did. And New Zealand experienced so few deaths related to COVID. I don't even think any directly caused by COVID. It was absurd. We had the best position in the world to have been an example to everybody around the world of how you could treat something rationally, appropriately, in fidelity to fundamental, time-worn medical principles that hewn over centuries. Okay.
Mm.
And they did the opposite. Instead, they proclaimed themselves the single source of truth. They forced this damn jab on people. They mandated people, which is against every humanistic, ethical, medical principle ever devised. And now they're hiding behind their cloud of deception about it. So
Yeah.
nothing's happening. Nobody's getting side effects. Nobody's dying. Everything's fine. Get a flu jab with mRNA and get a COVID flu jab, get the triple, get the quadruple, and people just go along their merry way. And we who see this are just aghast. And I know I have to tell you, there are other doctors out of the 18,000, 19,000 doctors in New Zealand. There have to be at least another 1,000 doctors who have their eyes open and are seeing the truth about this stuff. But where are they? Where are their voices?
Yeah. I sat through the NZ Doctors High Court proceedings against the Medical Council a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of the most astonishing cases I've ever seen. I still can't quite believe what I heard in that case when the lawyer for the New Zealand Medical Council said at the start of the rollout of the vaccine was safe. There were no risks from the vaccine. It's like, how can you say that?
That
MedSafe, the
contradicts
regulator.
MedSafe. MedSafe came out actually and said we can't even approve it. And then
Mm,
2 or 3 days later, they found a way through the medical assessment, whatever advisory committee, to
yeah,
get somehow to find approval, which they could not have done in 2 or 3 days if MedSafe, when MedSafe raised these flags and concerns. So
yeah.
again, the fix was in, the agenda was set. We still don't have the Pfizer agreement with New Zealand available to the public, even though the public paid for it. What are you hiding? Okay.
We've
And
been
I
to
said,
the ombudsman about that too. A lot of us went to the ombudsman, and it was actually quite funny because the ombudsman accidentally CC'd us all into one of the replies so we could see who else had gone to the ombudsman. Um, But the it was just a crazy outcome. But we know that that contract says that Pfizer does not warrant the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine because they haven't completed the long-term studies. We know that it says that for Albania. We know it says it for South Africa. We know it
right.
says it for a whole lot of the South American states. So I'm darn sure that they wouldn't have had a different clause or not a significantly different clause in the New Zealand contract. And they have to say that because they didn't know because they hadn't finished the safety trials. And yet again, the government is telling us, and it's not the regulatory part of the government so much, it was what I call the political arm of the government, Unite Against COVID, that was set up by the Prime Minister's Department away from the Health Act and away from all the rules and laws. They were set up as basically the government's spin machine, their propaganda machine, to keep pumping out this safe and effective rubbish. They were pumping out this honestly false claims. Nobody could say it was safe and effective when so much information was missing. And
Well,
yet,
Unite Against COVID was a war against the people. That was all that was. Okay. And again, we get sucked into this issue of the jab. What is killing me here with the medical council is that they are still harassing, persecuting, dragging people into tribunals, people who did nothing but worked as good doctors. Now, one doctor is going to a tribunal November the 4th, Bernard Conlon, who works in a deprived area of the country. From what I gather, and I hope I'm repeating this correctly, I think he treated 1,500 patients with his own protocol. Only 6 people went to hospital, 4 of whom were jabbed, 2 of whom weren't. Nobody died. They're attacking this guy for treating people, for being a good doctor, for doing what any doctor worth his or her salt should have done and should be doing. And the medical council is getting away with it. And they have to be stopped. I don't even think Winston Peters and Tanya Unkovich and the MPs even know what the medical council is doing. And they don't even know how corrupt, and they don't know what their ties are to this entity known as the Federation of State Medical Boards, which is like the Sauron of the whole group, pulling all around the world. I wrote an article about a doctor in
mm,
Ireland who, when again treating people, helping people, they tried to take his license away. Okay, so it's a coordinated effort, and the people have got to know about it. The real people, they've got to see these good doctors and say, "Hey, I know her, I know him. They treated me. They're good people. Why are they being hauled over the coals for being good doctors?"
yeah, I've got a good friend in Nelson who was a doctor. She was a very good doctor, and she did an interview with a 17-year-old about informed consent. And because of that interview, she got so much persecution from the medical council that she quit being a doctor. I mean, just ridiculous. And then I've got another case I'm involved in with somebody who hasn't practiced for 18 years. But she spoke at a public meeting that a whole lot of other members of the public spoke at, expressing concerns. And because of what she said at that meeting, she's been hauled through the Professional Conduct Committee, through the Health Practitioners Disciplinary Tribunal, with really serious findings against her and massive costs, incredibly punitive costs, over $100,000 of costs
They
for a
can't get
hearing
away
that
with
she.
this. Sue, they can't, Joe, they can't get away with this. We need the only way we're going to stop it because the high courts are not going to be our friends. The government was against us. The fix is in. The COVID inquiry may get somewhere, but I am not betting 10 cents on it. But the people have to know. And I've said this many times, people who are being themselves persecuted have to show their faces to the public and let them know what's being done, pure and simple. And we've got to create a movement that does something to show how this medical council is like, it's like a rogue battalion. They've had no
Yeah.
accountability to anybody. They're doing anything they want to do. Now, they're supposed to protect the public, correct? Against, real malpractice, real malfeasance. Nobody in our group who's under their harassment has done anything but help people. So
Mm,
you're getting punished for helping people. This
yeah.
is this, I don't care how brainwashed you are. When you see that, you've got to scratch your head and say, hey, this just is not right. In a country where there's a dearth of good doctors, where there aren't enough GPs, there aren't enough anybody in this country, and the public health system is crumbling as we speak, like minute by minute, but that doesn't stop them. I know, for example, there are two other psychiatrists in the Wellington region, and they were really well liked and kind of well beloved by the people they served. One was the head of the eating disorders, regional eating disorders unit. They were mandated out. I'm telling you, these people are not replaceable because we have so few psychiatrists to begin with, and we have fewer competent psychiatrists to begin with. And yet they cut them off like nothing, okay? Because they got the word. This is what we're gonna do. We don't care. So this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing I would hope that people around us can rally around and it's not a political thing. It's really a very basic, the most fundamental basic thing you can imagine.
Yeah, if you go to your doctor, you need to be confident that the doctor can tell you the truth and tell you the pros and the cons, and not that the doctor is in fear for their own career if they warn you about risks. It's just absurd to even think about what happened. The whole process, sitting through that court case, watching that process that that medical council went through to basically invent COVID guidance, harass doctors who didn't follow that COVID guidance. And now they say, oh, no, that didn't really mean anything. Well, if it didn't mean anything, why did you file disciplinary charges against doctors who failed to follow that COVID guidance that didn't mean anything?
Hmm.
It's just totally wrong. They've been pulled up, and instead of admitting that they've brought medicine into disrepute themselves, they're trying to blame the doctors who actually stood up for good medical ethics and who did stand up for informed consent, who did follow the law. It's everything is so back to front, inside out. It's just a crazy system we have at the moment.
So, what are both of you hoping to see in our COVID inquiry? I know they're going to include vaccine injuries, but there's several ways they could do this and still not adequately give people justice. I know that in Australia they had word limits, they suppressed some people's evidence. So I'm wondering what concerns and what aspirations might either of you have, and even for law changes for this COVID inquiry in November.
Yeah, it needs to be public for anybody that's happy to give the evidence in
Yeah.
public. They need to be able to give it in public, and it needs to be recorded so that people can actually see the evidence, and so it's available so people can see other people's cases, because this whole thing of, oh, you're the only one, We know that's a lie too. And if people know how many of these cases there are, no doubt there'll be a whole lot others that will get the courage to come forward again. The other thing is there needs to be accountability from those in the establishment. They need to be cross-examined. It's no good just having a tame bunch of panelists asking them gentle questions and not holding them to account. People who have been injured by these people need to be able to ask questions like in a proper Royal Commission of Inquiry. They did it really well in England. They've just had this massive blood inquiry about blood contamination. They've come out with really strong findings against the government, against the establishment, who basically knew for decades that blood was contaminated and did nothing about it. And yet here we are with COVID doing exactly the same thing wrong again.
And I would add that the COVID inquiry is not just an inquiry in the jab. The jab is a part of the whole operation. We had lockdowns were never part of any pandemic management principles in the past ever. They were not recommended. We had mask mandates, okay? We had the active suppression of treatment, allowing people to treat people. We had the subversion of first do no harm, one of the Hippocratic oath. I'm a fundamentalist. We have to look at how they could have gotten away with upending everything that is fundamental to human rights and also the good practice of medicine. And I think we need to get them specifically to look at the medical council and hold them to account. Now, recently, a whistleblower came forward, as I've written about in my latest Substack, about how the medical council operated, showing and read into the high court proceedings recently the attitude they had, the dismissiveness they had, and I don't quite know how to describe the vindictive, amoral, ascientific perspective that they brought to the table, which is still allowing them to hurt good people, destroy careers, and also to hurt the people whom these doctors serve, who need good doctors. That's the other part of the equation. You're going to take out these doctors or limit their practices, and so they can't help all these people who need help. So that's what the inquiry, I think, needs to do as well. Again, look at the fundamentals. How can you subvert these fundamentals?
Yeah, that was I sat through that High Court case, and it was just astonishing when that affidavit evidence of the whistleblower from the Medical Council was read out. And people were just stunned. I mean, I think it's probably what many people had expected in a way about the attitude of the Medical Council, because if they had have done a competent job, they couldn't possibly have come to the outcome that they came to. But just to hear it was just so blatant and just so disrespectful of the doctors and the law and all of
Yes,
the ethics.
yes.
Everything that they're supposed to be there enforcing, they completely ignored themselves. And it's not just the medical council, it's the dental council. I did a case for a midwife and I cross-examined the CEO of the midwifery council. She couldn't explain where their COVID guidance came from. It just magically appeared one day and she couldn't remember anything about it. How can that happen? How can these, how? Like, we all want to know. Was there someone threatening them with their career? Was there money changing hands? What was it that made supposedly professional, competent people forget everything they knew? And not only that, turn against the very people who were trying to do the right thing and who were trying to talk about it, and turn against them, accusing them in a defamatory way of sharing misinformation, disinformation, whatever, when in fact, the only information that I've read that is incorrect, blatantly incorrect, is the information coming from Unite Against COVID and from government sources and from some of the councils. That the information shared by the practitioners that are being harassed is
I,
based on fact. It's
yeah,
based on the same information as MedSafe, the regulator, was concerned about.
and you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to offer a challenge to Dr. Bloomfield. I'd like Dr. Bloomfield to come forward and tell us how many COVID inoculations he got and to show us proof.
Mm.
Okay? I think he did. I think the public deserves that. I've heard quite a few rumors about his having had only one jab while he was mandating everybody else to get the whole slew of them and kicking people out of their practices who were in medicine. So I think it'd be really nice for him to come forward, show us the documentation that he got his fair share of the inoculations he was pushing so hard on everybody else.
Yeah, and the criteria for the people that were given exemptions. Why were some doctors and some health administrators given exemptions and others weren't? And
Yep.
especially when they had advice from the Ministry of Justice, which I've seen under from the Official Information Act, the Ministry of Justice said it would be unlawful to discriminate because they had no proof that it stopped transmission. So
Yeah, so
there
I'm
was
gonna go,
no.
I'm gonna go again. Dr. Bloomfield, show us the proof that you followed the orders you were giving everybody else. Let's see it. If you've got nothing to hide, should be no problem. It will give you a Bible to swear on, in fact. You can swear in a Bible or New World Order agenda. Take your pick. But let's see the evidence.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. What a great idea. So this female doctor who's been dragged before the tribunal, obviously she just wants to win her case and go back to practicing medicine if she's able to. I don't want to get too personal, and tell me if this is too much of an inappropriate question, but in your opinion, do you think the process that they've put her through, do you think that's made her mental health worse than what it
Yeah, of
was?
course. Yeah. Listen, anybody going through a process like this is going to be under enormous stress. They're going to be afraid for financial consequences. They're going to be worried about every little T or dotted I that they may have forgotten in a note from 4 years ago. It's a terrible thing to do this. My friend and colleague Peter Candiday, who is an adversary that more than met the match, was taken before a health practitioner's disciplinary tribunal, and he produced a brilliant 70-page brief that countered everything they level against him beautifully with evidence, etc. They didn't read it. They didn't take it into account. And that's because they're corrupt, they have an agenda. And as a result, this guy can't even practice in the States because of the taint of these proceedings against him and his inability to get insurance in the United States where he holds another license or two. So they've destroyed a wonderful person's fine career. They're trying to do the same thing with Matt Shelton and other doctors with Bernie Conlon and many others. I don't want to mention too many names here because I want to keep things kosher. But we have to understand that we're up against an enemy that is really lawless and ruthless and sadistic. And we can't, I think, if you think by playing nice with them, they're going to be nice to you, you're deluded. The
Mm.
only thing they're going to listen to is some strength and force and gathering of public opinion on their behalf to counter them. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so wrong. And as wearing my legal hat, I have to ask where this basis of these allegations even come from. Since when was it wrong for a doctor to share their opinion on a, a medicine when it can be used, the risks and whatever? That we don't have an interrogation every time somebody looks at a different medicine. What we should be having is an interrogation about remdesivir and some of the ones that weren't approved at
Right,
all.
right. That's a good point, Sue. Very good
We're we're
point.
we're getting doctors are in trouble for prescribing ivermectin off label, but that's absolutely a normal thing for doctors to do. There's a few protocols to follow, but they're entitled to prescribe medicines off label. But remdesivir was imported at the choice of Ashley Bloomfield, financed by Pharmac, and it wasn't even didn't have any approval from MedSafe at all. It was an unapproved, completely unapproved medicine. And
And
there's a
it's
whole lot of
dangerous. And it's dangerous, Sue. It's
and it
very
kills
dangerous.
people. The
Yeah,
evidence is that when they've used it in trials, they had to
yeah.
stop using it because so many people died. And I've had contact from people whose parents were given remdesivir in New Zealand without consent, and the person died.
Are you kidding me? Seriously?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh my word.
yeah. A
I mean,
lot
this
of
is,
people that,
you see what I mean,
yeah,
Joe, about what they're doing? Okay, this is an agenda. They're following some kind of script. They run roughshod over the law, and they're turning the world upside down to fit this perverse program that they're imposing on us.
yeah. And it's like you can't get any traction because there's nothing. The law, the rule of law should mean that the Bill of Rights is a really solid foundation that you can argue from, that informed consent is a really solid foundation, that the purpose of the Health Practitioners Competence Assurance Act, the purpose of protecting the public is a solid foundation. But instead, all of those things are just like standing on jelly, marshmallow that's just got no solidarity about it at all anymore. And so we're trying to argue basic principles of law, but with no foundations. Well,
Well,
being told that we can't
Sue,
use the
listen,
foundations.
you're in a town that's owned by a mafia, okay? They own the courts, the judges, the cops. What do you expect? You're expecting justice? You expect to talk the mafia out of doing crime?
Mm.
No. And this is what
Well,
we have to realize. We're being ruled by a mafia that has no respect for the law. And I think the only thing we can do that has weight and power is to galvanize regular people and let them know what's happening. Because if they really know what's happening, I think that the mafia is going to have to change their tactics.
Thank you both of you for being on the Kiwi Rocket. I just feel like this is quite a nice place to leave it. Just as a closing question, what is it that you would like people to do in the next 3 months, maybe, to try and push things forward? What would you like to see happen?
for me, it's about people getting empowered and actually doing research on how they can promote their own health and well-being, how they can look out for other people, and how they can hold the system to account, their rights, asking questions, going to meetings, getting involved. People say, oh, no, I'm not interested in politics. Well, whether they're interested in politics or not, politics is affecting their lives. And for me, the learning out of all this is, you know, being a citizen actually has responsibilities. If the system is going bad, we have to step up. It's up to us how things are going to turn out from here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like people to demand proof that Dr. Bloomfield had the requisite number of jabs that he was imposing on the rest of the population.
I think that's brilliant. That idea will take off. So many people will get behind that idea. It's going to go
Good.
viral, I hope. I cannot imagine people, especially people who protested outside of Parliament, I can imagine a lot of them just picking that up and running with it. It's a fantastic idea. Thank you both. I hope you have a great day.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been fun.